Hello and welcome to the Animation Kimmunication podcast, your source for discussion about animation, film, fandom, and more. So please, join your host, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, or KP, and Lauren Kizich for today's discussion. If you like what you hear, please remember to support by giving a like, a follow, as well as subscribing to the main I Love Kim Possible a Lot channel on YouTube. Spread the word and keep being a part of the great Kimmunity. This episode contains some mild adult language.
Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of Animation Kimmunication. This personally is one I've been wanting to talk about a while for, so this is very grab your glass of wine and chill and listen to our bad stories, because the worst possible thing and the scariest thing is bad PR, mwahaha, which is basically how especially of the recording, the presidential elections are still going on, so you can kind of see everyone's relationship with the public via how they're campaigning. So basically how the public perception is seeing you, even if you're not the same person. You think of The Rock, who everyone was like, The Rock wants to be a movie star 10 years ago. Now they're like, The Rock should be president. I'd vote for The Rock. So I don't know. Do you know how that happens? PR. So public relations. So it's a thing with journalism. So something that I've not had a fun time with. So PR and toxic creators. So the other part of this is talking about how my big thing is, because of the internet, everyone has a platform, but everyone has a platform. So you get really toxic creators who, even if they're not speaking out publicly about their toxic behavior, there's a lot of enabling and big therapy terms going on that we're going to discuss. So my overall rule is we're not going to say any names. I don't want anyone to be like, I heard on the podcast that Jimmy Joe is a piece of garbage, so I'm going to talk to Jimmy Joe on Twitter or whatever. But it will be, if you do your homework, we'll leave some links in the description. It will be relatively obvious. So you gotta, I'm not about, protecting people from their bad mistakes, but just don't harass anyone. This is a happy place. Everyone just be nice, but hopefully these stories can help people learn about the internet and how it's dangerous sometimes, which is not fun. So anyway, so with us today, we don't have an industry guest,
Whitney,
but we have some
probably the one
other
I talk
important
to
people. So we have
the most.
two team. So
Team
we talk about
KP
daily
people,
about, or
Whitney,
pseudo
who
daily
just
about
rejoined,
things
so
that are
say
going on
hi,
with the
Whitney.
team and how to
Tell
approach specific problems.
Proud
Because
about yourself.
the thing about doing interpersonal work is there's just a lot of technical ways you should approach specific problems, and especially sometimes fans and nerds in general are not the best with social skills, so it's about trying to find ways to delicately help people to improve or see what's going on. And then we have Tifa, who's been who's a super senior staff editor. So Tifa's, what about you? What's up?
Well, as you heard, I've been on the team for, I want to say, almost 4 to 5 years. I really cannot recall when I started. I'm an editor, and I do some videos for KP. I'm also known as Gutslove on YouTube, to make it easier. Plug. And I'm also a graphic designer as my real job.
What are some of your projects that you like to do on the team? Since you've I think you joined mid 2016 or something like that.
I want to say yes, because it was during the production of that one radio play.
Oh yeah, fuck that. I hate it.
That thing still haunts me. That thing still haunts me because I was in charge of doing cleanup for many of the chapters, and I was like, But then I think one of the bigger videos was like Made in Manhattan, or that one Rainbow Dash episode from the same season. I can't recall if it was season 5 or something. But one of my favorite videos that I worked on had to be either the Stan Lee video or the one I believe I want to say was also Clone High. But before that, I really cannot tell you which other one was my favorite for the top, at the tip of my tongue. Viva Mexico!
Okay, yeah, and Tifa also is Mexican, as in from Mexico. I'm not just being like super racist and like everyone's Mexican. No, she's like physically from Mexico. So sometimes, if needed, she does some Spanish subtitles, but we don't really do that often. And then Lauren's here again. I don't think I introduced you, Lauren.
Yes. I feel like my presence is omniscient. I'm always there, always present. It's like, even if I'm not always heard, I am definitely there.
So you're basically the Team KP Santa Claus.
Yes. Who wants toys?
This is still the Halloween time.
She sees us when we're sleeping.
She knows when
She
you're
knows
awake.
when we're awake.
She knows if you're awake.
I know.
Hey, I'm trying to make it
but
creepy.
Stores have been putting up Christmas things.
She sees you when you're sleeping. She sees you when you're awake. She sees you when you're sleeping. She sees you when you're sleeping. She sees you when you're sleeping.
But hey, if typical stores have Christmas stuff earlier and earlier in the year, we can do the same.
I mean, I guess buy me stuff. People don't do that. Don't sim for me. Anyway, so we have a bunch of news stories because I thought we wouldn't have any, and then like a bunch of stuff happened because like Hollywood is shut down, and the only thing that is happening is like animation. Imagine that. So I'll let Lauren talk about the first thing because I think she will explode if we don't talk about it soon. So go ahead, Lauren.
Okay, so as of recording this, I did see Lupin the Third, the first, the English dub release in theaters, and it was only one night, one screening, and I was very, very fortunate to be able to go see it, and I saw it with Chrissy, who has been on here, Cosmic Keyframe. She was a pretty recent guest on our show in the past, and we went and celebrated our 12th friendiversary to go see it, because she introduced me to Lupin as well. So I mean, what's a little gushing to do between sisters, right? So it has an English sub release coming up in a couple days. So as of recording this, that would be on October 21st. So whenever you hear this episode, sorry you missed it. But the thing is, it counts as a Fathom event in the theaters that have been able to play it, because it was like a special event thing. This was, as far as I know, the only releases that have been distributed outside of Japan that have done the dubs and the subs and stuff like that. So especially in the wake of COVID. But yeah, this movie had its Japanese release at the end of 2019. So it was only a matter of time until it made it over to the States and elsewhere. But no, really good, really well animated. English dub is great. If you are a Lupin fan and you love the cast from Part 2 in particular, it's pretty much everybody that's back except for Dan Lorge, who played Inspector Zenigata. It's now Doug Erholtz, who plays him in Parts 5 and 6, and he is an excellent Zenigata. And it's a lot of fun. If you've never gotten into Lupin the Third, basically it's a whole heist series. It's the longest running anime series, I think, to date. And it's a heist series about a team of thieves who travel the world trying to steal treasure, and there's always this inspector that tries to capture them. And I think Indiana Jones meets James Bond, meets Ocean's 11, meets Looney Tunes. And it's a lot of fun. And the movie is a huge homage to that, especially since the creator, Monkey Punch, unfortunately passed away last year in the middle of the film's production, just before they were going to finish it up and release it. But he was very involved in the creation of the movie to make sure that it was true to the legacy and cementing hope for more Lupin content in the future. Yeah. So.
No,
want
no,
me to keep
I
going
was
with
just
more headlines
making
here?
sure you were done. And
Oh yeah, no.
so if you like Disney Plus, like this show is not sponsored by Disney Plus, but because of the state of the industry plus the general accessibility of Disney Plus, words are hard. They are doing a lot of original stuff that they can release relatively easily. So, two of our stories about that. The first one, which I was kind of surprised about, is again Pixar's Soul is going to be released on Christmas Day on Disney Plus without any extra fees, so you can watch it on Christmas. So like I think I talked last episode about how I'm surprised they did that because like the Mulan marketing campaign was like pretty much done, so I see how they were like, well, might as well. But so they could have held on for a little longer, but I think they're really bleeding badly. So there was the extended trailer dropped. I'm excited for this. Like existentialism and creative passion, especially like in media, are like what two of my favorite tropes. So I'm curious to see where this goes. Yeah. We got to see how like it's interesting because like the trailer didn't really. They're trying really hard to not have any like religious elements in there besides like just general heaven and hell kind of things. So they're talking about like souls being created and like it's a nice happy place. It's like and I'm like, is this purgatory? But it's like a happy purgatory. So I think it's interesting for such a big studio to kind of juggle that thing like when historically other studios kind of deal with religion a little bit more. You know, like we have Don Bluth with the Heaven Dogs and I know what it's called. I did that on purpose, but anyway.
All ducks go to heaven, yeah.
It's fine. And then we have Prince of Egypt, obviously, which
Sorry.
has heavy themes of religion, but I don't think I mean, this is probably like if we're counting Fantasia, like kind of close to like discussing religious stuff for Disney, which is interesting. So, I guess we'll see what happens. I am excited about it, and you know what I like. You know what I like more than movies about existentialism? Existential movies that are free because I don't pay for my prescription of or subscription of Disney Plus. My brother does, who is actually employed right now. Thanks, COVID. So, do you guys have any thoughts on Soul?
I unfortunately haven't seen the extended trailer. I have no idea why I've been putting it off. Ever since the first trailer, I thought, oh, this looks cool. But aside from that, like I mentioned before, I haven't seen the extended trailer, so I really can't add more to that. Sorry.
In general, I find the character designs to be very fun, and like full of life, essentially, which obviously, because that's the premise is soul, and so they want it to, which good character design. But some complaints that I've seen from people online in general is that, oh, this is like the umpteenth movie from Disney where the black characters don't stay human for the whole movie.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, or like, or the people of character who end up being animals for like either the majority or half the movie, aka Emperor's New Groove, aka Brother Bear, and others.
Yeah. So that's also a thing, and I'm not sure if they're consciously doing that or not. But
I don't think so, but yeah, I can see that complaint.
yeah. But aside from that, I don't have enough of an opinion on it yet. I think that it looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. Just that, I think a lot of people were hoping for more of like a general, like, uh, more human story and less
Mhm.
focus on the soul part, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I think I had an idea like that too when I first heard of the film, and I thought it was gonna be more like, oh, finding the soul in your like in terms of passion, like into your work, which in this case the character is very passionate about music, and I thought, oh, it's gonna be something related about that, not necessarily related to, oh, this character's freaking dead. We're about to explore souls in the
Yeah,
afterlife.
I thought it was more metaphorical, not literal. I thought they were going to go in like a
Mm-hmm.
soulful improv jazz type of direction, but that's not the direction they chose.
Yeah, I'm curious to see where they'll go with it, because it seems like that even with how much content they put into the trailers, they don't give away everything, and that seems to be something that, for the most part, Pixar's been really good at doing with their trailers, is that they give you just enough to get you
Oh, yeah.
interested, but then they don't give away absolutely everything. They give you just enough to give you a little thirst for some more some more info. But yeah, I'm curious to see how it goes. I mean, the music in the trailer already had me feeling really good, and the visuals. I'm like, everybody goes, oh, Pixar keeps getting better and better with their rendering and stuff like that, and I think some of this rendering, especially in the human world and the living world scenes, some of the best rendering I've seen out of any Pixar movie. And so they just keep getting better and
Oh,
better.
yeah.
Like, the lighting is especially prominent, that it's just done so well that it seems very photorealistic. And everybody thought that, Good Dinosaur, while it wasn't a strong story, the visuals were really amazing. This one, I'm hoping that it's balanced out with incredible visuals and great storytelling, which, I mean, I don't see this as a carbon copy of Inside Out. This is just another means of exploring, the inner workings in a way that is more, again, it's the soul. It's more spiritual rather than thinking of, like, in the literal sense of emotions in your head.
Yeah, and definitely like the subject matter. I can see the comparisons of Inside Out, but I think they're just like they're similar but they're different. I don't know if that makes sense, but I'm kind of like, I get why Inside Out people liked it, but I'm kind of like, yeah, it was okay. It was interesting. I don't know. Okay, so next story is speaking of Disney making things that we don't need. So they're releasing a Olaf short called Once Upon a Snowman. They've already started teasing it. Lauren, is there a release date for it yet? Do you know?
I believe it's exclusive to Disney Plus. I may have to double back on the release date. Let me double check that.
I think it's going to be at the end of October, because I remember seeing the promo earlier today, and I think it says something about October 20 something, but I really can't tell you, like, oh, it's on the 23rd or the 24th. I just know it's going to be at the
October
end of
20th.
Okay. Oh, that's relatively recently. Okay, so of all the things, I mean, I guess this makes sense, but I think and I think it would have been better to release this kind of concept maybe like a couple years earlier, because now it just seems like the market is oversaturated with like Frozen like shorts with everything, and then we got Lego Frozen shorts, and I'm just like, enough. Like, so I think the concept is interesting, and I think it's something that can be explored relatively in a fun way, because it's a contradicting narrative to the main movie, which is different comparatively. But again, I think I'm kind of about Frozen. Like, again, same kind of feel. Like, I get why people like it, but it never like personally was like, oh my god, this is the best movie ever. So, but I can see that why they're like, especially like relatively recently in the last couple of months or so, because of coronavirus, we were getting a bunch of Olaf
Yeah.
shorts about, trying to keep everyone together and just fun things like called Olaf at Home. So I think on top of that, we're just like more Frozen stuff. Like, come on, man, do something else.
Our last headline, because we obviously have to save the best for last. We are getting the movie 2020 deserves, with Universal Pictures Home Entertainment's Bobbleheads coming out on December 8th specifically. If you have not seen the trailers, first of all, you're lucking out right now. But it's another little gold nugget from the studio Threshold Entertainment, which, if that name is familiar to you, it's probably because you remember it from Food Fight from 2012. So Larry Kazanov, the director of food fight, and I guess he runs Threshold Entertainment, his production company. He is one of the co-directors for this, along with Kirk Wise. Now, if for all the Disney files, you all know Kirk Wise as one of the directors from Beauty and the Beast, Hunchback of Notre Dame, and Atlantis, and that's just to name a few. So this is an interesting amalgamate of where you have Kirk Wise, who comes from this prestigious background of Disney films, and then there's Larry Kasanoff, who
director.
Let's just say his venture into animation wasn't exactly the strongest he could have had. It was big, but not in the way he intended. And I have seen the trailer many times by now for Bobbleheads, because it's one of those. It's mostly because it's one of those things where once you see it once, you're like, no. What am I missing here? What am I missing? This is a gag, right? I'm like, and I look, okay, so the premise is, as far as I can gauge it, is that there is a couple that wants to, there's this like I don't know, there's this couple played by Jennifer Coolidge and Luke Wilson that and they bring in their dog, and they all wanted, like, I guess they moved into a new house, or they are trying to like break into the house. I'm not sure. I think it's they moved into the house. And meanwhile, these bobbleheads that got left behind by their family when the move happened, which, again, this is all I'm gauging based off the trailer, is that these bobbleheads got left behind, and they are basically trying to protect the house, not realizing the reality of the situation. Meanwhile, their heads constantly bobble, as bobbleheads do. It's very distracting and very annoying. But and I can only imagine what a pain it was to animate those.
She's been tortured.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm just gonna say my piece about this, and you guys can jump in. Like, if there's a bad movie that is writing off the fact that it's gonna be bad, which seemingly this movie is banking on, so you get all the YouTubers being like, emoji ripoff, and then they get 1 million views, and then they're advertising the movie. If you don't want bad movies to exist, just don't see the bad movies. Don't see them ironically. Like, just don't see them, because then the studios realize they won't make money, and they won't make them anymore. It's that simple. End scene. Okay, everyone else can jump in.
I honestly
think... and Cher is in it too, by the way.
Oh my god, no, Cher.
Cher,
No.
another one bites the dust.
What's going on? Well, I, for one, I think I commented this with a friend of mine, how I really think that this is also banking on the whole thing of, X thing that's basically seen as a toy or as a collectible can be made into a feature film, as we've seen with Lego Movie, which was amazing. I unfortunately did not see the first one in theaters because I thought it was just going to be a cash grab movie. I was totally wrong. And I then saw the rest of them in theaters to support the films, and they were amazing. I did not see the Ninjago movie, so I can't say anything about it. And after that, we got the Playmobil movie, which I just knew it was going to be a cash grab movie, and I heard bad comments about it, so I'm like, yep, I'm not going to waste my time with it. And now we get the freaking Bobbleheads movie. Well, before that, it was the Emoji movie, and everyone knew it was bad.
And yet, it still made so much money.
And that is very disappointing. Like, I'm not sure it's because the audience or the moviegoers think, we did take Lego Movie for granted. Maybe this is going to be the next Lego Movie, only to be fooled. You fool! You fell for the classic blunders. So that's actually my piece. I unfortunately didn't see the entire trailer. I was looking through my Twitter, and someone had the trailer playing, and I just barely saw a few seconds, and I'm like, yeah, nope, skip.
This is my first exposure to this. I've not heard about this somehow. Um, but I don't know if I want to. I'm just thinking, I swear
Oh,
that
wait
I saw
until you
some
see it.
baseball movie where they had a gag where like
No.
the bobbleheads were like animated and talking and bouncing around, and I hated it. And so the idea of sitting through an hour and a half of that, I don't want to. I just don't know what the thought process with this was, because with like, at least with like the Emoji Movie and the Lego Movie, those things feel topical. I don't think I've seen a bobblehead since the 90s. So,
And the funny thing is, the designs of these things, these characters, looks very 90s.
Oh,
Does
yeah.
it not? Including one of them supposed to be like an anime type character, but she looks like the westernized version of an anime character, if you catch my drift.
Yeah.
Where it's the major sparkles on the eyes, the bowl cut, the I'm like, why?
And the robotic
Why?
armor.
And she's got the robot armor. I'm like, okay.
Get in the Ava, Shinji.
I genuinely don't know. I kind of am in the same opinion as Rachel, except for the fact that I think that bad movies should exist. Because, for one, they serve an example of what not to do, and you can analyze them and say, okay, why is this bad? Because sometimes for people who are starting out, and they look at something that they really enjoy, they have a hard time discerning why they like it until they're given the bad thing. And also, what would I complain about? But
That's valid.
I don't know what to expect from this movie. It sounds to me like something that I'm probably not going to watch outside of the trailer,
Isn't
now that
this
you
a second
brought it to my
chance?
attention. But I really hope that the director gets a second chance.
Not even the power of Kirk Wise can help.
Yep, I mean, I really hope that he's able to redeem himself with this, and if not,
I mean, at the very least,
I don't know.
at the very least, I can say the rendering looks better than
No.
Food Fights did.
At least there's that. Yeah, I think the issue with what Whitney said too is like I get and bad movies, and like I think people's disdain is like millennials and their blind nostalgias. You have to understand the movie's bad and acknowledge it's bad, but like analyze what you like. But at the same time, like we have enough bad movies. Do we need more? Do we need new ones? Like like the only thing I think of when I think of bobbleheads is like the fucking the Funko things, which don't actually bobble. I don't think so. Maybe they're like
You jinxed it.
no, but
Are
like
they not
just
making a
maybe they
Funko
couldn't
movie?
get the rights to the Funkos, so they're just like, well, do bobbleheads. The kids will know what we're talking about or something.
And now we are gonna get a Funko movie because we just jinxed it.
So
Well, in 2019, it was announced that there were plans for one, so I technically didn't jinx it.
yeah, it was
my
already
God,
it was already jinxed before you came on. Mwahaha. Okay, I think those are all the news stories. So now it's story time. So this
Yeah.
is story time podcast time. So instead of the usual stuff. So I'm for those who are new and don't know me that well. Hi, I'm KP. So so I've been a content creator since like 2013, which makes me feel old, and I don't want to think about it too much. But I guess in the midst of that, I've seen a lot of good from people that enjoy the content, and a lot of bad from people who are pretty fucked up, I want to say. So again, my rule is I'm not gonna say any names, but you know I'll leave it pretty obvious. And you know my also thing is I want to, or it's important for me to like speak my truth and not really what's the word mess around, not mess around, but like try to hide things. I don't know, like just be honest with like things that have happened and not just hush things because they are bad. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm rambling, but anyway, like I'm a very like something that I've learned from the thing I'm going to talk to you about is I'm very like outspoken and making sure that people know that they have boundaries with me directly. And this is something I'm sure Whitney will talk about when we get to her. And making sure that, if there's a problem, like, like I don't know things that other people know. And, yeah, it's all about like, just being direct and like people won't hate you if you can't do a podcast one day or you can't draw that thing on time because like it's your mom's birthday or whatever. Like it's all about like I think communication. So it also comes into play when we're doing all this stuff nonprofit wise because like there's situations where I'm like, okay, so like let's get an example. Soul, like if I wanted to cover Soul on like as soon as it came out, that's Christmas. So I'd be like, hey, editor person, I want to do Soul. And if we want to get a jump on this, we need to start like around Christmas. Like, what's your Christmas schedule like? Is that okay with you? Versus just assuming that they're going to say yes because they're afraid of me or they're afraid of like, I don't want to say like celebrity because I don't personally consider myself like anything like that or like special or anything, but there's an elevated sense of importance when it's someone else that you admire, and that kind of works for everyone. You're just afraid that you're going to screw up if you're starting to have a more personal relationship with that person. So a lot of times something that will happen is they'll be like, oh, I'll do that thing for you, KP, because you asked me and because I want to impress you. And I'm just like, but are you sure? And they're just like, yes, KP, it will be great. And then they, unbeknownst to me, they neglect something that was important because they didn't tell me about it. And then they either get burnt out or they neglect like just basic habits like sleeping and eating to get this thing as fast as humanly possible to me. And then I'm just like, how'd you get that done so fast? And they're just like, I didn't eat for 14 days. I'm just like, you shouldn't do that. Why did you do that? So just my basic thing is about communication, especially when you're doing nonprofit stuff. But like even when you're not doing nonprofit stuff, there's always the motivation that people will lie, like even not to their boss, but like in between each other because there's the monetary advantage and they were like, I'll do it because I like this job versus like this is not realistic for me, I need to set boundaries. So having boundaries is good. So that's my spiel before I go into this. So anyway, I did the pony fandom stuff. For those who found me post pony, congratulations, you figured it out. And so because we do nonprofit stuff, one of my first mistakes is hiring not children, but like, 16, 17, 18, like the age you would when you would have a part-time job in high school anyway. So I don't do that anymore, So we had a pretty toxic individual who was a really good editor, but he lied about a bunch of different things. From the get-go, he lied about his age. He lied about deadlines, even though he was warned. He got in trouble with the police at some time, which Whitney, I don't think you know that part, but he kind of mentioned it, and I was like, okay, well, you're not a trustworthy person anymore, so bye-bye. So, but when, like, I think the mindset of this child was basically, well, oh no, I'm being he was in another friend group that was, had these issues of not bringing up things that should have been brought to my attention, which makes me paranoid today of people and trusting people. But anyway, so, and the four of them, like, kind of formed the circle of just, like, bullshitting on me. And I think what happened is he was manipulated by that. So it was two guys, it was one girl, and it was him. And he was manipulated by that to kind of think, oh, I'm a horrible person because I am I'm having people do things for free. I don't know. Like, we've talked about that before if you're new, but like the TLDR is essentially um, have your boundaries and know what you personally want to get out of things for free, especially with all like the reanimated collabs that are out today that people are contributing to, which are all nonprofit, obviously, because they're doing copyrighted stuff. Are you guys are still listening, right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay, I don't know anymore because like half of this podcast is just gonna be me talking. Okay, so anyway, so then this child with the two guy friends, I really
Yes.
think the girl person was the main contributor as far as the general attitude or the bitterness or whatever, because like of the two animator boys, one had a positive experience that was manipulated to have a negative experience, and the other one just wasn't firm with his boundaries. So the fourth person, I think, was the one who was just mostly bitter because she wanted something that I wasn't aware of, and she never really communicated that with me at all. So anyway, so the two boys formed this Twitter account where they're taking like assets from old animations and taking me out of context, from what I remember. Let's see, what else were they? Like doing fake legal threats to try to harass me, because I think what happened is like they were worried about assets in a specific video putting them in copyright trouble. So instead of like talking to me about it or like doing research with that, they were just like, oh, we just need to take it down because like, you know, they're gonna go after everyone and my name's in the credits for that video. So that's my only thinking, my only way to really think about, or that's probably my takeaway. So anyway, so I was manipulated to think that I was this huge horrible person, that not only these people had like, you know, horrible experiences with me who I didn't know, like I had some ideas who was behind the Twitter because of the timing. Like I knew the child was basically behind it the whole time, but I didn't have any distinctive proof. Just because of his attitude of just like he leaked stuff before. He let's see, he would like send team members like the resistance is futile, KP will go down or something like that, you know, like all caps, like edgy, quote unquote. You know, it was a huge fucking mess. So like from what I remember, it was like things that were taken out of context for me, animation files, legal threats that were, I'm just like, no, I don't think that's what's happening. So anyway, so I was surprised with like a relatively, you know, what I thought was a relatively educated fandom was just kind of taking things like this as a, you know, at a grain of salt, whatever. And especially people that I really need like support wise. So like everyone was afraid to touch me. I was getting like death threats and people were telling me to kill myself every day, you know, fun things. So then I developed then I got traumatized and got really bad PTSD, which was great, which I'm pretty vocal about like my trauma and stuff like that, only because I think it's helpful for people to really understand that, you know, what you can do, and that's why we just had this conversation about boundaries. So, you know, and it helps me to know that like my experience is helping other people cope. So, you know, let's see. And then from what I remember, so this happened for a couple months, and I was super like physically sick because I, you know, couldn't keep down food, which is great. I'm not trying to do this to like please pity me internet, but it just kind of just factual. And then so the female of the group was being like neutrally vocal and being like, "Oh, KP, well, I don't think you're a bad person, but you don't deserve all this hate." And I'm just like, "Oh, someone who can like explain to me what the fuck is going on, because I don't know what's happening." So I contacted her. She was apologetic. But what she neglected to tell me is that she was involved with the Twitter, like however minimally, I don't care. But she knew who was doing it, and like she didn't relay that information to me, which would have been integral in making the harassment stop sooner. So, which is like, I still think like that's like the cruelest thing anyone's ever done to me personally. Is just like not the fact that she was withholding the information when I was just getting so like horribly, disgustingly, like physically sick. It just like to save her skin. And then so a couple months later, so December, where I'm like kind of starting to stabilize. So it took a couple months anyway. So one of the two animator dudes was like, "Hey, so it's us. Sorry." So we had a big conversation about it, and they felt really bad, and they were like, "We should have just talked to you." And I'm like, "No shit." So I'm relatively okay with that. But what the thing I think the thing that I take away from that instance in specific is I did a public apology, which I took down obviously, just because I didn't really understand. Like I thought that's what I needed to do because people were apparently so hurt when it was just manipulation from what I found out later. But that by doing that, I kind of admitted my own admitted guilt, quote unquote, because I was apologizing for the thing that seemingly happened, which was a mistake. So, oh well, I guess. And then the second thing is, let's see. I don't think there's a second thing. So then when they told me the girl was involved, and I chewed her out because I was just done. And then she gaslit me, which she said something along the lines of like, "Don't be the monster everyone thinks you are by sharing what I did publicly, because it doesn't matter what I did, but my personal reputation is more important to me than your mental state of mind. Sorry, I was an asshole." So again, that's something again too I didn't realize. Like I was trying to be like, well, I guess I'll try to be better than my enemies, but like in reality, it was evading consequence, which is really fucked up. So that's part
Which
one,
I have to say
I guess,
that
of
thing is bullshit.
my
That is
huge horrible
gaslighting,
clusterfuck
and
of
it's like
things. And I'll kind of touch base on the toxic creator thing, and then we'll talk about the research Whitney and Tifa did, because Tifa was actually a witness through all this,
Yeah.
and then Whitney was just kind of tired of me dealing with it, and was just like, I'm just gonna do things, like I'm just gonna call it what it is, I'm done. So because it's relatively better now, but I get like really bad anxiety at night, and like I have problems being around people that weren't as prevalent as just like an awkward artist kid now. It's like it's relatively under control of this moment, but guess who's on like a ton of medication because and I think my other big takeaway too is I realized like the community in general kind of like was like, "Oh, well that's kind of what you get," which was which was like not everyone's attitude, but was a lot of the general attitude towards it, which I think was like, I get that they were afraid to talk to me because I was quote unquote toxic and no one really knew what was true. Sure, fine, whatever. But just kind of the coming away of just like senior like convention people were just not willing to say anything or do anything, or just be like, with some exceptions, like I love you, Casey. But anyway, with some exceptions, because they were just like, "Oh, we don't want to deal with this," and I'm just like, but by your lack of not dealing with this, you're letting toxic people that are lying define the narrative. Do you realize that might be bad? So, yeah, and then there was another person, which I will not name, but, another popular person in the community, a male, who was basically was like, that's what you get, and that's what you get for not paying people for making people do for free stuff. And let's see, what else did he say? And it was basically communication problems. Again, like he didn't want to put any more work on the team when we were doing videos, or I was sending him video stuff. But he didn't communicate that with me, and he was much more set with like, oh, the fandom's not toxic, you're toxic. And I'm just like, yeah, I get that a lot of people, especially at the conventions, are not particularly the toxic minority, but it's still there, and you just can't ignore it because it's convenient. So a lot of that mindset too. So that's why I'm not friends with him. But okay, I think I'm done with the initial part. Whitney and Tifa, do you want to jump in and talk about like your frustrations with just this situation in general?
Well, I remember that I was part of the team a few months before this whole ordeal happened. I was even wondering, like, hey, I've seen KP kind of absent because we were at the time using Skype before we moved onto Discord for the team stuff. And I was a bit nervous. I was like, is something happening? Is she okay? And then you just reappeared and got us on, you gave us the information of like, hey, I'm not entirely, like, God damn it. Why can't I talk? You gave us a kind of an idea of what happened, but overall, I just knew that you were sick, and I was like, oh, I hope that she's okay. And then I then got the information, the entire information, to finally have my own, ideas, and of course, I can finally know what actually went behind the scenes. And I was honestly shocked. At the time, I was a bit more naive, and I also thought that, okay, KP is actually nice. She's a good person to work with, even though I was barely on the team for a few months. And it was only years later when I finally got more of the information. I actually saw evidence of what happened, and all I can say is, holy freaking shit! Why don't people get that with this evidence? Like, be it con people, be it bronies, be it whatever fandom, it's like, here's the evidence. Why the frick are you still going on and on about this? Here's the evidence proving that you, KP, were the victim of the frickin' situation. You were gaslit. You went through horrible shit. And people still be like, oh, but we can't say anything else because we don't know the entire story. And I'm like, bitch, please, there's evidence here. But there's people who are like, oh, I just don't want to get involved. And it's like, you know that it's worse when you don't want to get involved. I do not want to name names, and honestly, I also don't want to be like unsure and people say like, oh, I heard this from the podcast because one of the people said so. So I really can't like say names without any backup.
Yeah, so again, but I guess it's just, I guess a lot of it, before I pass the metaphorical mic to Whitney, who did a lot of the research, a lot of like her own project in the middle of not being on the team. Yeah, but I think a lot of like the brony fandom stuff, especially after Jenny's video, is just like a lot of times everyone was focused on the perception of the fandom being this happy, positive place full of like misfits who found their way to make something positive out of their shitty lives, kind of thing. Like it was like this haven, and like no one wanted to accept the fact that it might not be a haven all the time because everyone was married to the idea of that positive kind of like, oh, we're not perverts, we're not weird, we just really like the show, like unironically. We just unironically, which is fine. And like again, all like the majority of my experiences during conventions have been positive and people just being positive towards me. So again, but it's still like, even like when there's Nazis in a fandom, or like maybe
the P word.
Everyone's not doing.
It's like
yeah. like maybe we should take a step back and call it what it is and say like there are some toxic minority individuals in here that we should hold accountable for being pieces
Yeah,
of garbage.
exactly that.
So you know and it was just like like I tried to work it out with individuals, and then like a lot of it was, oh, now I tried to work it out, but then they recorded me and they made excuses and they were gonna leak things to, like, not that I was really worried about what I said, but it was just the fact that like, oh, we did this dishonest thing to try to help our side, and I'm just like, look, you guys are adults. Can you start acting like adults and pretending that, or like acknowledging the fact that your online, like, I get that your online personas are the most important thing because it defines you and feels like you have purpose when you didn't have purpose before, you were broken before, or whatever, but not at the expense of doing unethical
Or harmful
things
things to another
and
person, whether or not it was directly or
or
indirectly.
advocating, right, yeah, or advocating for bad behavior. It's just like, like, I tried to work it out, but then I realized there was other toxic examples, and I was just like, you know what, I'm done. Like, when you're making fun of your, like, this allegedly, but when you're allegedly making fun of your fans, like, privately, to shit on them to make yourself feel superior, when your fans just love you, and even if it's shitty fan art, like, they spent the time to make that art because they love your work. Like, shut up and stop and be an adult and stop like shitting on people because you're self-conscious. Like, I can't do it. And like, even, I won't get into it too much, but like same kind of attitude, which is like the general state of the world right now is like, I voted Democrat because I'm just like, I'm done. So I'm just done with a lot of just people acting like children when they shouldn't act like children. Like,
Yeah.
come on, man. Okay, Whitney, you can talk now.
Okay. So for the podcast, I won't name names. However, there is a video on my channel my channel name is Tuffy Twist. And I did name names, and I go over specific research, things that actually did happen, and further evidence of things happening, and then legal consequences of those specific actions. Because a big thing, like, we could talk about like just the general morality of this type of behavior, but when push comes to shove, what happened was extremely illegal in every sense, and fell under defamation and doxing. And that's general United States law. When you go state by state, it's different based off of what the laws are in those states. So, like, for example, doxing could fall under harassment and stalking, or it could fall under cyberbullying. It just depends on how that information was shared. Um, but my general takeaway is that a lot of people like to pretend that they know their rights and that they know the law, because they have these ideologies and they're kind of stuck in their ways and a little bit brainwashed by the education system. But that's a rant for a different day. Not here.
No.
But like, that is also an issue with the Bernie fandom. Like, as Rachel used an example, they tried to claim that Rachel did this illegal thing by using these assets and the potential copyright issues, and they even supposedly cited a law, and then when that law was referenced, it had nothing to do with it.
It was debunked.
And yeah, it was debunked. So things like that. You should know better. As an adult, as a functioning member of society, you should know better than to do something like that. And the legal consequences for doxing somebody, for harassing somebody, for spreading misinformation that could affect them financially or socially, or could cause them to be harassed, which could affect their mental health. All of those things could result in a court case and a lawsuit, and you could be paying restitution for their medical bills, for their medication, for any financial revenue lost. In this case, there wasn't any because the channel is nonprofit, but if like this happened to, let's say, a huge celebrity, and then they weren't able to find work or get a job because person A claimed that they kicked puppies, and photoshopped them kicking puppies. Like, they could sue you
Yeah.
for doing that, and then you would be responsible for paying them back the money that you would owe them for doing that. So
He lied about his
Yeah,
age.
not to bring up like Clone High, but it did make me think of when JFK and Lincoln competed for like student body president, and JFK led a whole smear campaign against Lincoln, saying like, you know, it's like saying
He
he eats
eats
babies. Because have you ever seen him eat a baby? Well, you may have never seen it, but how do you know he doesn't do it? And then they're just like, I just love eating babies, and it's like, I love eating this baby, and it's like him eating spaghetti.
Yeah, or they just pretend to be these white knights
Yeah.
of society, and henceforth do these awful things because they think it is the right thing to do. We must right these wrongs, and then they just end up being horrible. And can I swear?
Yeah.
Okay. Just end up being these little shitheads of society that think that the hottest piece of shit out there, but end up being the worst of the worst, and you just want to kick them right in the freaking
The
teeth.
road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Oh no. And then it's like the actions justify the means, and it's like, no they don't, you asshole.
yeah, and that's another thing. Even if you have good intentions, your actions are your actions, and if they're illegal, they're just illegal.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter what motivated you to do a specific thing. You did something terrible. It's Thanos, you know, like that's a fake example, but like,
oh my.
he may have thought that he was doing a good thing. Doesn't change the fact that he killed literally half the entire population of everything.
Exactly. It's
cool motive, still
yeah,
murder.
that's why it's just like it's like going to the point of like, I get it, I don't approve of it, and it's not right, but I get it.
And the thing is, this whole situation wasn't even motivated by good morals, because in the video that you can see on my channel, there's also a call linked in the description where one of the previous team heads had a conversation with that person, had recorded the call legally. He had the right to do so because he had permission from a third party. And in that call, the individual in question had confirmed that he was not thinking of the team when he did these specific things, only the people in his general group that were encouraging him to, and he knew that there would be negative consequences that would reflect back on the team. His motivations were very selfish. He did talk about wanting attention and vindication, essentially. So this whole situation was essentially just a child looking for attention, maybe looking for acceptance from his peers, which is another thing because his peers were adults, and they were actively encouraging this behavior. So they looked at a child who already had been struggling, didn't have very many probably good role models in his life from just a gut feeling. I don't have confirmation on that. It's just a gut feeling. And they manipulated him by encouraging his bad tendencies and saying that this was okay and that he should do this. Which, as an adult, you are responsible for what you teach children, and children are sponges. Even at the age of like 16 or 17, when they're almost adults, they're still absorbing a lot of information, and that includes the way that you treat them and the way that you treat other people. And they see that, they internalize that, and that shapes their personality and how they're going to treat other people. And it takes a lot.
Along with the lessons they either directly or indirectly receive from them.
And it takes a lot to unlearn those habits when you realize that they're a problem. And most people tend not to realize that they're a problem.
Okay, I'll do a takeaway too. And it kind of still really bothers me in some ways where, not that these people need to be canceled per se, but when they're more concerned about the general public learning about their bad behavior versus like the fact that they did a bad thing, you know, whatever, and it had public consequences, like, that's when you need to respond publicly. Like, I don't care how minimal or whatever, like, you know, and it bothers me because, like, these toxic people, have an audience where they're quote unquote role models to children, and like if the children knew of their bad behavior, of them, like recording people illegally, of people, of just the general abuse, and what else was there, alleged, like, suicide for attention, like, again, that's alleged, I'm not sure, but it just it bothers me, and it bothers me that, like, I can't be more vocal sometimes about it because people are believing, like, bullshit about, me or whatever, that it's gonna deflate the argument. Like, something that also really bothered me too is this instance where I have my friend Lachlan, who's been on the podcast before, told me of another content creator who will will also remain nameless, but you might be able to guess who it was. But anyway, so a male who was going to wear a dress on stage as a joke, and dance with his other male friend for a generally big crowd. Security, it was a ballroom event. Security would not let him in because, it looked like he was doing it for giggles, which was he was, and he pretended to be a transgender female in order to get past security.
Oh my God.
And I'm just like, and this is someone who has a really big audience now, and and that just, like, he's not inherently a bad person. He's not as bad as the people that we've been hinting at the podcast, but it shows a huge level of immaturity in the fact that, like, he was really distant to me when I thought he was my friend, and but like, that could catch up to, like, I'm not gonna, like, make a thing about it, but, like, that could catch up to him, and it's like, you're not as invincible. Like, you can't just do shitty things like that and pretend it's okay, but, like, if someone else is dealing with something, you can't pretend it's not your problem either. Like, you have a responsibility now. Like, with great power becomes great responsibility to do good and, like, do charity and educate people, and especially when you're talking about animation, like, which is, like, my favorite thing, and, like, and Lauren's favorite thing too, probably. Yeah, it's like
Also
everyone's
mine.
really passionate about it, and you're there, like, teaching people animation history, and people are looking up to you, but you're doing this shitty shady stuff, because it's funny and because you want to be validated by the fact that you're doing a funny thing, even though in hindsight it's a really shitty thing, and it's gross, and, like, and that's why I hope that people that are listening to this can kind of just look at their favorite creators and just be like, I took a class about media literacy in college, and the general essence of that is looking into your sources, looking over to where the information this information is coming from. And I think, like Whitney touched a little bit about the schools, the American school system, and I think part of it is just, like, this bias to kind of believe what we're hearing and, immediately. But I like,
As a great philosopher once said,
right, and,
question
like, you have to realize
everything.
that the majority of news media is coming from seven or eight different conglomerates, and they're controlling, like, not to go all 1984 on it, but, like, they're controlling the majority of what information we have publicly, and at the very least, like, check where this stuff is coming from. Check if your sources are credible. Do they have a reputation of, like everyone, like, makes mistakes. Like, news sources make mistakes. That's fine. People make mistakes, but do they correct those mistakes? Do they hold themselves accountable, saying, "Oh, my bad," or do they just kind of run with it? So in my notes, a big celebrity example that I wanted to bring up is the Johnny Depp case, where what happened, from my understanding, is Johnny Depp was accused by his wife of being physically abusive, and I think Hollywood tried to make, like, this is like in the middle of like, or well, I guess we're still in Me Too, whatever, but this was like a couple of years when Me Too was like even a bigger thing. And Hollywood in general was just like, fuck that guy. That guy's a piece of shit. And like through the process of the court cases and about exes coming out and speaking on his behalf, you know, it turns out that Depp wasn't the abusive one. He was the one being abused just by past behavior and by history. And it bothers me that, like, because that's similar to what happened to me, and it bothers me that, like, people were just, like, so eager to believe things. Yeah, pounce and attack, especially
right?
because they're like, oh, that person's famous. They're more accomplished than me. They're better than me, whatever. But they did the bad thing, so everything else before that is just null and void. Like, I'm not saying, you know, and they're not. Well, at the very least, they're not. I think that should totally be the case for pedophiles. But like, they're not questioning, you know, something that isn't concrete yet, or he said, she said, or whatever. You know, and I think it's really important to believe victims of crimes too, but I think, you know, when they're turning into court cases, like, or there's, you know, like at the end of the day, when there's like probably like 15 or 20 different witnesses of the same crime, like probably like the person did it, but like, you know, don't just throw your hands in the ring. Like, be smart, be adults, like question things, like where are they getting their sources? Is their sources biased? Like, there's different media outlets that have super biased sources, or that, you know, they pretend they lie consistently and they might be manipulating the public. So, not to get too political, but, you know, I just hate things, like, and I just hate crappy people and creators, because, like, I think it's like such a cool, neat thing that, you know, we're in this day and age where, like, me as a YouTuber can assemble, you know, other people that are passionate about the thing that I am, and then we can create something better than something we can make on our own, and money doesn't have to be the driving factor. You know, like, everyone's just passionate about it, and they all just want to make something out of it. And, you know, I think if Walt Disney was like a millennial YouTuber, I think you'd be going about it like a similar way, you know, like, where's that fan fiction, you know?
Oh my goodness. And going back a little bit to, you know, being a YouTuber and also during the events of what happened to you, I just wanted to add this comment about how people who, I'm not gonna name names, again, I'm not entirely sure, so I prefer to not mention names, how many people claimed to be your friend because of the collaborations or whatnot and blah blah, how when this happened and they just decided to clean their hands, like, oh, I don't want to get involved in this, and it's like, why are you not trying to figure out if this is true, or if this is a whole, well, not necessarily conspiracy, but like, why not get involved? Why not try to help, to find out
Right.
what happened, to get your facts straight? And they just, like I mentioned before, they just wash their hands and they're like, oh, no, I'm not involved. I'm not involved in that. Or in other cases, another person also is like, you need to be the bigger person and forgive. And I'm like, that is some load of
Yeah.
bullshit. Like, it made me physically angry. And I was like, why not do something about it instead of being the neutral party? And yes, I am doing the finger quotes like Dr. Evil. Honestly, it made me so angry, because it's like, they're supposed to be your friends. They say they're your friends, but they did nothing. And they also got involved into some other stuff with another person who they turned out to be a pedophile, and they also washed their hands off that. Like, oh, we're just gonna try to get this person some help and be the bigger person, forgive and forget, and blah blah blah. And I just want to smash you across the face with a freaking soldering iron. I get that creative in terms of my. Like,
I mean, I think
pain.
I guess I wanted to end this on just like some general like red flags to notice in people. Yeah, and
to identify,
I think a lot of it too is just general fear about what's happening, and like fair weather friends, and like the dress guy that I mentioned earlier, like it made me so angry because like he's been to my parents' house, he had dinner like with my parents, he's met my dog Harry, who usually is in the background, like sometimes when I'm recording he's quiet, he's pretty chill, and like it just feels like, oh, you were only nice to me because you liked me. Oh, you only like there were issues that like, let's talk about them. You don't just like avoid people when there's things that you need to talk about. Like, I'm not trying to be a bitter
quiet.
grandma over here, like back in my day kind of thing. But it's just like, I'm hoping with like this is all relevant to the general political climate that you guys can the people listening to this can kind of like relate with, I guess. But I think there's something to be said about standing up for doing the right thing, and we can even like go back to like Nazis and shit, and when like Hitler was gaining power, a lot of people were just like, it's not my problem, and then really bad stuff happened. So I think, it became their country's problem in general. Among other things. But, I think, everyone as a human being has a general responsibility just to learn some, like, general good and bad psychology terms to understand when you're in a toxic relationship with someone, or a toxic friendship, or there are toxic people in your environment. Like, you should just tell them to go to therapy and back the fuck up. So, Whitney, do you want to add anything before I just go into some general like red flags of people just people in general should look out for, whether it be their friends or creators or whatever? Yeah.
Or even family members. That's the biggest red
Yeah.
flag of all, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. So, on top of just PR in general, like most of you are probably listening to this are content creators, so I'll talk a little bit about that first. Just in general, don't do things unless you know that you can own up to those things. Like, if you genuinely cannot say that you're proud of doing something or certain behaviors, like everyone has an off day, but you also consciously decide how you treat people, the actions that you take. Like, you don't accidentally just dox someone. You don't accidentally start a harassment.
You don't accidentally look for a person's address and then leak it onto the world because you think you're doing the right thing. Oh my god.
And like, I just think of like, I've made bad mistakes because like, I don't know, when you just kind of fall into like, I don't want to say becoming popular, but like kind of gaining an audience, and then you just like, you do things but without realizing that there's consequences. Like, I remember like one time, like for the radio play, like for the announcement, like there was an announcement where we were announcing the cast. Like, this was like 6 years ago or something like that, and like the editor used people's real names, and then like as soon as it launched, we were like, oh my god, you can't use my name. And I'm like, oh, I'm an idiot, I'll take it down. But like, that's just what the takeaway has to be. Like, you need, like, I would have known that,
You need to.
Yeah,
you need to check
it's
with
just
people.
like, all you have to do is just own up when you do stupid mistakes generally, and just kind of be aware of like what people are comfortable with, and being comfortable having that conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, were you going to say anything else, Whitney?
Yeah, I had a couple of points. Sorry.
Okay, go ahead.
So yeah, there's that. And then recognizing behaviors within yourself, because we are all human and we do all make mistakes and we all have tendencies and trauma and habits that we learn from other people, whether it's family or business or whatever. Um, like receiving criticism with grace, which Rachel does that pretty well. Like I've talked to her all the time, almost like every day. um, but yeah, being constructive when receiving criticism. If you feel like you have a problem that's more deep set, like it's a habit, it's not something that you can easily break, like blaming other people or miscommunicating or not having the confidence to talk about the way that you really feel. See a therapist, do some research online, just see if there's something that you can do to help yourself, because the better that you get at communicating your issues and um, the better that you get at receiving criticism from other people when it does come, the easier it will be to handle situations that do come up. And then, final thought, this type of thing isn't just content related, it does happen in close circles and families and with significant others. That can harm you or you can harm them. You can gaslit and convince that you were in the wrong.
Should we define gaslighting too? So if people don't know what that term means?
Oh yeah. So gaslighting is essentially when somebody does not want to take responsibility for what they've done, push that back onto you, and it can be in an aggressive form or a passive form. So like aggressive forms of gaslighting, an example would be, "Oh, I'm sorry that you feel that way. I'm sorry. I'm such a terrible person. I'm sorry." Like they don't actually say that I'm sorry. They're trying to guilt you into thinking that you were the problem. And then other forms of gaslighting that are more minor and subtle can be like, oh, but you need to forgive, be the bigger person, forgiveness is the answer. And well, for some people, that is the answer. In general, unless that person who has harmed you is making efforts to be better, and not just saying that they're trying to be better, like making actual efforts that you can see, uh, you're not obligated to spend time with them, to forgive them, to talk to them. Like, it is like I'm gonna get a little bit controversial for a second.
Go for it.
Okay, so in general,
Go for it, go
forgiveness,
nuts.
is a religious concept. I grew up Mormon. Um, I'm gonna use an example from the Book of Mormon, even though I don't believe it anymore. So there's this guy named Nephi, and he has two brothers, Laman and Lemuel, and they're the worst. They beat him up, and when they go to get these family records that had been stolen from them, uh, they both the brothers tried and failed, and so Nephi was like, "Hey, let me," and then they literally beat him up for trying to say, "Let me, I have an idea." Um, and when they get them back, they travel from Israel to America, um, and they straight up tie him to a boat mast because they got angry with him, and they were just constantly abusing him and putting him through all of this. And even though even the gospel teaches about forgiveness, in the end, Nephi goes his separate way from his brothers. He does not talk to them again. They do not interact again because you should never be forced to be with your abuser ever. So anyone who tries to use religion as like, oh, but you have to forgive, you know why they're saying that. And I know why they're saying that. And it's not because it's a religious thing, it's
Yeah.
because they don't want to take responsibility. They want you to forgive, they don't want to repent. Or just say sorry, own up to what they've done.
Yeah, exactly that. I was gonna mention that. Hey, they want you to forgive them for their wrongs, and just basically you be the bigger person. Again, I'm also doing the finger quotes, and it's like you're letting them do whatever they want, and they're just gonna keep telling you like, oh, you be the bigger person, forgive, and it's like, no. But go ahead, Whitney. Sorry.
Yeah, so like if you are a religious individual and you have like taken an oath to forgive people, then that's you, and I'm proud of you for doing that. But forgiveness isn't the same as like letting those toxic people back into your life, into your circle. And if you don't want to forgive somebody, it's not your moral obligation to. outside of any morals that you give yourself. Nobody else should be telling you what to do.
Okay, I'll just jump in and talk about some red flags for people. So, or just red flags in general for your just social relationships. Yay. So, if you have someone who's a piece of shit, here are some like red flags. So, a lot of why I'm not publicly like akin with all like I don't want to say like how do I word this? I'm not publicly as close to all the other bronies. Like I know like the TF2 people have like a group and they talk to each other a lot, and that scares me in general because people I don't know scare me. But anyway, you know, is the I think either sometimes there's just general lack of understanding and not trying to understand, and or just enablization via just passiveness. So like, you know, oh, we'll be fine, or oh, you know, I'm not gonna do anything, you know, but not doing anything, you're saying that the thing is okay to do when it's not. And you know, it's hard when like you're traumatized by a community and like other people in the community, like with some exceptions, just aren't really saying anything because they just don't want to get involved. And I'm just like, that doesn't feel like, it feels like you value your reputation over the health of your friends. That doesn't seem like it's a good thing. Shrug, sigh. So anyway, so just general things that things that I have noticed is, besides the whole like rationalization, words are hard, of just really unhealthy things or like illegal things. And I just want to say, just because you do something on the internet does not mean you are not accountable to the laws of different states.
It doesn't make you immune.
You remember that cyber stalkers. I mean, I don't want any cyber stalkers listening to this, but like if you know any, just like go yell at them, go beat them with the stick. Metaphorically, don't actually beat them. So again, just general enablization of just like on how I'm trying to think of examples of just general, like people in general are afraid of confrontation. That is just a general rule that I've learned. I am not, and I am not because I try to protect myself from people that don't have my best interests, or people that, you know, I don't really want in my life, but I can realize that can be intimidating sometimes, like especially when I'm doing collabs with people I don't know that much. I'm gonna be like, I'm gonna put it all out here. If you have anything you want to tell me, then you can. I'm cool, yo. They're just like, oh, but what if I tell KP and she hates me? And like usually when someone offers that, they won't hate you if you're gonna tell them something. They're just like your mom, like they're just glad you told them, unless like you killed someone. Don't murder people, everyone. I know it's the spirit, but you know that might be going a little bit too hard. So you know, and the other thing too is like, you know, a lot of this one of the biggest things I've learned generally in therapy is that you are not accountable for someone else's mental health. Like at the end of the day, it is their responsibility to help themselves, because you cannot save them if they're unwilling to take your help. Like you can talk to them, you can let them rant to you, you can listen, like, but you know, putting up your boundaries and saying like, hey, you know, I'm not available tonight, I'm out, but like I'm sorry you feel bad, we can talk later. You know, that's usually all they need. But I see a lot of people just trying too uncomfortably hard to save people, quote unquote, that they can't save, as well as, you know, stating your boundaries in your talking about your expectations for specific things, you know, are really they require a little bit of sense of self-worth, like, you know, and self-care. Like you are worth your self-love and self-care, and, you know, and you can't blame yourself for these miscommunications if you're not having a conversation about them in the first place. Like, again, I had a friendship where a lot of the negative behavior, like confirmed by my therapist again, where it is just a lack of communication. And because of this person's lack of self-worth, they weren't advocating their boundaries or advocating their expectations well. And I can't
Yeah, because
know
there is
what to
communication.
do if
There
we're not
is
having
communication
conversations.
is
Again, like
key.
evident with Whitney, we're very frank about both of our boundaries, and look at that, we haven't had any real
I was actually
problems.
doing the
Whoa.
I was doing the the
Whoa.
Italian gesture. You know the one.
Communication. I'm just like physically doing like the Wittengapo like wave from like Pocahontas, like communication.
Oh, I wanted to add on with what you just said about how there's gonna be people who will comment on like, yeah,
yeah,
I'm open
and
for you
I
to
think
vent, but I'm not available right
let's see
now.
what else.
It
What other
also
bad
has
things
to be if
should
they're
people
in the
Go ahead.
mindset, because sometimes they are willing to listen, but they're not in the proper mindset. Maybe they're dealing with something and they want to deal with it themselves, so they can't really listen to you, or like I mentioned, in the mindset, because sometimes the person does need to be in a specific mindset or be free to be able to listen to be it you or a friend vent or whatever. There was actually a video by Jaden Animations. We're not sponsored by her, and she's just one of my favorite YouTubers. She also talked about relationships and how sometimes, be it friendships or platonic relationships or romantic ones, sometimes they do end up being toxic, and the person like threatens that, oh, I'm gonna hurt myself if you're not with me, or I just better kill myself or whatever, to cause either pity or make you stay because you feel like you have a responsibility, which is not. It's not your responsibility for their well-being, like you mentioned, and I just wanted to add that.
Mm-hmm. But I think in general, a lot of like the self-care and self-protection techniques kind of take a certain amount of advocacy. And also kind of like being willing to put it on the line. Like I will say, like I'm the first to say, like I'm very frank with people, and I can see why it comes off as intimidating. But if someone is frank with me, like it kind of scares me sometimes, especially figures of authority. Like I didn't start becoming what's the word, extroverted until like my later high school years. But before that, I was like no one believes me now, but like I was like a mouse. Like I didn't say anything. I was afraid of everyone. Like all my teachers would say, "Oh, she just doesn't talk." So which is weird to think about now, but like that was me the majority of my my child life. So I get it, especially because there's a lot of artist people. But I think these are just, again, healthy things to consider and continue to have healthy relationships. And again, like you want to feel like your friends are there to support you. I want to say publicly, maybe that's not the right word, but they like got your back, even though no matter, like, not no matter what, but like within reason, I guess, too. And you kind of realize who your friends are when you're in these situations where it's just fucking horrible, and they're just kind of like, I don't know, KP is pretty toxic right now because the internet told me so I'm gonna put my head in the sand like an ostrich and just hope it goes away. And like it works in reverse. Like a lot of times, like people don't know you're going through bad times because you don't tell them, and they can't help you if you don't tell them or you don't actively request for their support. So
I can kind of attest to that.
yeah.
Like, yeah, there was a time where I just disappeared off the face of the earth in terms of the team, and I didn't tell anybody because I was in a very depressive state because of the quarantine. And then you kind of did help me in coming back after like trying to contact me, but I was like, no, she mustn't know. I'm just gonna try to solve this on my own. And then it's like, okay, I do need to talk to people.
Since you brought that up, can I use that example quickly?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so like Tifa's work schedule is she's usually like since she's been on the team for so long, she has like what we call clean renders, where like when she's given an edit of a project, she doesn't have a lot of notes because she just knows the style and she's very meticulous. So like she can get work done pretty fast. Like the only thing sometimes she does now is she'll kind of like she'll kind of overestimate how short things will take her, and then work sometimes gets in the way, and then she forgets to tell us, which is not that big of a deal. But like, except like, communicate. Anyway, so don't do that, Tifa. But anyway, so before that, she would, like, if there was a big problem or a big, like, emotional problem, she would just, like, and this happens a lot, especially not just with Tifa, but, like, with new people, they just kind of, like, they dunk out, and they just ignore communication, and I'm just, like, I always say, like, that makes it so much worse. Like, it's okay if you have, like, you're depressed or something is happening at home, like, just tell us so we can, like, make appropriate accommodations. Like, I don't care, like, I don't personally see you in lesser of a light because your dog died and you need some time to, like, come on, like, don't be stupid. So, I was like, Tifa, like, it sounds like you need to go back to therapy or something. Like, I don't know you that well, but it seems like you have these cycles, and it got to a point at one time, like during quarantine, especially like when it's just started happening, where like she was dark forever and I couldn't get a hold of her anyway. So I was just like, I think I found Tifa on Tumblr, and I was like, hey Tifa, like, is this just it? You just done? And then we had a conversation, which is a conversation I have a lot. I'm sure Whitney's had a lot too at this time, where it's just like, hey, I don't hate you. You just need to tell us what's going on and just try to be proactive about your own self-care. Like, that's all. And, when you have when you're put into an environment where you have more responsibility, sometimes you realize a lot that you might need therapy, or you might need certain self-care things to make sure you don't get overstressed, and communicating your boundaries is a big part of that. And spiel. I think those are all my points. Lauren or Whitney, do you have anything else you want to add?
After actually, after you mentioned like the boundaries thing, I do like this is like some general advice for both employees and employers. So, employers first. I would recommend making sure to check in on your employees when you feel like there might be something wrong. Because if they're not doing their work, it's usually not because they're lazy. It's usually because they're depressed. And usually there's like a common denominator in those situations. So either they aren't eating right, they aren't sleeping right, they have an underlying medical condition, and they need to be medicated or perhaps seeing a therapist, and actively encouraging them to do so. And like sometimes it could be exercise, things like that. And it's not necessarily your job to be their therapist. You are paying them, or they are working for you, or they are receiving compensation in some way. But if you want your team to succeed, you need to make sure that everybody is doing well mentally, physically, emotionally. And for some people, they may not have an outlet in their own lives with other people, and you may need to have to step in and provide that for them, or encourage them to do things for themselves. As an employee, recognizing positive workspaces versus abusive workspaces. So, like, the whole drama thing was a claim that the workspace on TPP was abusive, and it's really not, because it's a volunteer thing. You work less than 20 hours a week typically. Like, and depending how fast you are, like, there's one artist on the team who is so fast, like, you give him an assignment and he has it the next day, and he's like, I got bored, and I'm like, wow.
Yeah, that person actually like really impresses me.
And so, like, on top of that, like, you're talking with people with similar interests, like actual toxic work environments would be your schedule not being respected, not knowing when your schedule is, your employer not communicating with you, your employer not acknowledging you when you try to call in for sick, not observing your rights as an employee, things like that. And like knowing your rights legally when those types of things happen. So if you're unsure of your rights, if you feel like they might be being violated, I would recommend just looking up the law in general, like in your area. Where I work, there's actually a bulletin board in the break room, which literally has like a list of like everyone's rights, making sure that they're being upheld, number to call if you feel like your rights are being violated, because I work in a really good place right now. But yeah, just as an employer, observe your employees, making sure that they are meeting their own needs. And if consistently things aren't working out, ultimately you are running a business, you are taking care of a team, you want to make sure that that team succeeds. You may just have to let them go. And it doesn't have to end on a bad note necessarily. You can give them advice or a place to look for more work, or you can say, hey, this might just be a temporary thing. Maybe go see a therapist and then come back in 2 weeks, or like give them temporary leave or something like that. Because you also need to be meeting the needs of your own team and your own budget, and making sure that things run smoothly enough for you to meet your own end goals. But you should not be compromising efficiency and humanity. There needs to be a balance of the end product of what your team is working on, as well as your own team's needs. And brand.
Lauren, as an outsider, do you want to contribute anything else to the conversation?
I guess what I could say, at least out of, from the point of self-care, is making sure that, that you are taking care of yourself as a team member. Just like everybody else has been saying, it's like everybody has to, like, when everybody is all part of a team and everybody's got to be doing their part, you got to make sure that you are keeping track if you are at 100% or not, or able to do it. And if you aren't, you have to be communicative about it. I think especially with this team, it's been very good to know that, you can communicate if something's wrong. So, or if you feel like you may need a schedule change or anything like that. So, it's very good to make sure that you have your entire team with all levels is communicating well, whenever anything comes up. And then at the same time, it's also making sure that you are doing your part and taking care of yourself and making sure that you are efficient. And I know we all have to remind ourselves, you got to eat. You haven't eaten yet today. You got to drink water, stay hydrated, take a break, gotta go stretch,
Did you take a shower?
take a walk.
Did you eat? Did you take your medication? If you are taking medication,
so it's like
did you take
it's
it
a
that
lot
day?
of just it comes down to when you got to take care of yourself, because you aren't going to give your all, your 100% if you're not 100%. So yeah.
Even reorganizing your room or cleaning the house can help. Like it's not necessarily helpful for everyone. It helps certain people, so it's just checking what can you do to help yourself, like clearing up your mind, like I mentioned, like cleaning the house or taking a shower, making sure you eat. And it's not a, oh, I just do this and I'll instantly be happy. No, it takes time. It's not like a one type of thing that just fixes everything in just an instant.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I keep talking.
Oh,
you guys
we're never gonna get out of here. I'm kidding.
We'll never
I'm holding you all hostage. I've been given the mic. I'm never letting go.
Help us!
This might also help to hear, but like similar to like Rachel having PTSD, like I struggle with anxiety and depression. I have since I was a little girl. And it's not really something that was triggered by anything. It's just something that was genetic and instilled in me, and I've just had to live with it. And I'm medicated, and I've been exercising more and eating healthier, and it's been helping a lot. But I still have bad days. I still have days where I just cannot function, and realizing that in those days it's okay, that I don't necessarily have control, because I'm still making an effort, communicating with the people in my life to make sure, hey, that they know, like, I can't do this today. I can't do this right now. Just restarting the next day and not falling into that pit, because it's not something that you're always going to have control over, especially if it's something that you're like genetically inclined to. It just happens, and all you can do is live with the out that you've been given and like doing your best.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's just about being accountable for your mistakes and noticing when people are making excuses for extremely, like, bad behavior and trying to rationalize them by, using their emotional needs as a way to, like, account for, like, oh, I was in a bad place, so that's why I said these shitty things. I'm just like, you still actively said the shitty things. Like, I don't care, like, where you were. I don't care if you were in Africa or what other bad place there was. Well, maybe Africa, maybe Antarctica or something. Not that Africa's bad. I don't know. It was just the first, like, place that came into mind. Anyway, yay, go South Africa. But I guess you got to hold people accountable for, and kind of figure out what is really bad behavior from what we described, and basically rationalization for really bad behavior, and seeing who people really are, and what's important to them, and like I've said, like, earlier, the internet gives everyone a speaking voice, and sometimes those speaking voices are potentially not good people, and they don't have to just be pedophiles to basically be not good people, or they might have a lot of faults if they're just not good people. But you should be cautious about what bad people are potentially telling you. Not that everyone's bad, but, like, how it influences their art, and how you want it to influence you as a person. So if it was up to me, I just take all the bad people and, like, take away their YouTube accounts. But I don't have that power.
Take the bad people and put them somewhere else.
Make them go to therapy and come back. So
and have a certificate that actually shows that they actually changed, instead of
certificate of
like,
completion.
Oh, I am better, and then goes back.
Congratulations, you did it. So I think I'm good. If you guys are good as far as all our discussion points, does anyone want to add anything? Yeah. Okay. Okay, well, if you think of something, Tifa, I'll just do the wrap up. So, in case you're new, like, again, this was an episode I wanted to do for a while, and just, like, that's just something I learned as far as doing content creation, and making sure, if you're a leader in a community, that you have to be accountable for pointing out the bad behavior, or not letting it continue just because it's convenient, just because, like, it's convenient for PR for your convention, or it's convenient for whatever narrative you're saying about yourself, or whatever's happening. So it's that easy. And I know it's hard being controversial these days, but at the end of the day, like, do you really want to be remembered as the person who didn't say that there were Nazis just because it was convenient? Maybe Nazis is an extreme example, but So notice, yeah, don't be a Nazi. Like, it's just that easy. And yeah, just notice these tendencies with anyone that is in your circle, whether they be good or bad. And just be careful on the internet, and check your sources. So, and spiel, but I wanted to do this because I didn't want to just, like, be passive in, like, all the bad stuff that has happened to me, around me, like, pointing out, not in a way that's going to harass anyone that was involved, but just as a way to bring it up and just say, hey, this happened, like, take it or leave it, kind of thing, like, shrug, sigh. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome. Two of you listening on iTunes, I don't know. We usually put out our episodes every Wednesday period.
We do our best with that.
We try. We're doing the things. So you can listen to us all the places that there would be podcasts. We're still scheduled to do a Halloween show the day before Halloween. So we're figuring out if we're doing it for charity or not. So keep an eye on the social medias for that. We're at the KP Podcast on Twitter and the Instagram that we don't really use that much. But anyway, please watch the videos on the main channel. Please share them. Like, we were all like incredibly disheartened when we did an original opening animation for an Avatar video, and then like no one saw it.
Video.
So like, do me a solid, yo.
Plug it and spread it.
But just like, sharing it around won't, like, it's part of like my creative process where it makes me feel good when more people are watching the things we work on, and like it's exacerbating to work on a long video and be like, so like 500 people saw it, which doesn't, like, I'm grateful for everyone who watched it, but I'm just like, but the sexy anime butt video got like 2 million views. That's not fair. So that was just like
Sexy
the first
anime
one off the top of my head. But anyway, yeah. So, and the more like the more videos we make that spread around, the more like important contacts we can have and like trick them into doing videos with us, and then we get like like episodes with like other industry people, which is always good for everyone, a win-win. So yeah, make sure you follow us on Twitter. You can follow Lauren and I on our Twitters. Subscribe and notify the main channel, and I guess the YouTube one for the podcast, if that's how you consume the podcast every day. I don't know where people are listening to things. It's fine. Do you guys want to plug yourself, Tifa and Whitney?
Okay. You can find me on YouTube at Taffy Twist. You can find
I'll
me
let Whitney take
on
this
TikTok
first.
at Worm on a String Mom, where I make really crappy My Hero Academia videos about my worm girl OC, who has worms on a string for hair, and that's all I make.
Oh, I was just going to remind
I myself,
I'm
sorry,
going to
go
remind
ahead.
people before I forget. The links to the videos that we discussed are in the description for you to not take us at our word and consume all the evidence and then be disappointed by humanity. So both of them, one's like, I think they're both 45 minutes each-ish. So if that interests you, they're there. So I promise we're telling the truth. There it is.
There's the evidence.
We
You
did
can
it.
Look it up. Don't think we're lying.
Okay.
Well, I'm glad we were able to do this all together. Now I know it was a lot of
Oh,
trying to
Tifa's
schedule
got to plug
everything,
herself.
so I'm glad we were able to have this.
Oh, Tifa, plug yourself real quick.
Yeah. Okay. As I mentioned earlier in the podcast, you can find me as Gutslove on YouTube, also as The Real Gutslove on Twitter. I mostly do videos about video games or content that I like. Recently, I've been doing a Nightmare Before Christmas Oogie's Revenge playthrough, which I plan to finish on hopefully Christmas if things go well, or even earlier. Because hey, it's Spoopy month, and I wanted
Hint,
to do
hint,
something
wink,
Nightmare
wink.
because I love Nightmare.
Best part is with Nightmare Before
Yeah.
Christmas, it spans over 2 holidays.
Yes.
All right,
makes me
and I
so
think
happy.
that's it. So I guess see you next episode, which will technically be our last Halloween pre-recorded Halloween time episode before we switch back to the normal one. Before we switch back to the Christmas themed overlay. So happy Halloween! Stay safe. Trick or
Stay
treat with
spooky.
masks on, which you were probably already doing anyway, but now like more. So.
Always
Merry
check
Halloween.
your candy and disinfect everything.
Merry Crisis.
Yay!
Merry Crisis.
Oh my god!
Go vote. Please vote. Please vote.
Please go
So
vote,
done.
please.
Merry Chrysler.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to Animation Communication on YouTube, Spotify, or your favorite podcast provider. We are really hoping this show makes a difference in how people view animation and media, as well as giving and providing advice for people all over the world who like or want to join the animation or media industry. If you liked what you heard, please remember to subscribe and rate those 5 stars, as well as tell your friends. Don't forget to subscribe to the main YouTube channel, I Love Kim Possible a Lot, and turn those notifications on. My name is Scribbler, and you have been listening to Animation Kimmunication.